So what would be an XML conference without a presentation about JavaScript? I don't know. So let's see what it goes. And Pieter is going to tell us some feedback about his use of Saxon-JS.
One, two, yes. 3, 4, and so on. Hi. I'm going to talk about Saxon-JS in the real world to see if it really works. Anybody does not know what Saxon-JS is? Okay, Saxon-JS is XSLT written in JavaScript, and it runs in the browser. And you might also call it interactive XSLT because it has extensions for doing the things that normal people would do with JavaScript. So if you know the Saxonica products, I can easily stop talking because you probably know the answer of this talk. But eating is the proof of the pudding, so let's see how the pudding tastes. One of my customers is the Institute of the Dutch for the Dutch Language. It's something like the Académie Française or the Institute for the Czech Language, but then for a language that I understand very well. And one of the things that they do is produce dictionaries. And in fact, this slide has an error because it says large dictionaries, but in fact it's huge dictionaries. These are the dictionaries that my application is going to deal with. And they range from the oldest written Dutch in the year 500 until 1975. And they didn't stop, but they just started a new dictionary and they are still working on it. Let's see if I can get a light. This dictionary is, or has been, I don't know, the largest dictionary of the world. It consists of about 43 volumes. And if you stack the books up, you get my length plus half of me, which is 3 meters. And they worked on it for 134 years. So these dictionaries, and some other dictionaries here too, they date from back to the pre-digital era. So maybe some of you remember those times. We didn't have computers. And like Fred Flintstones, our cars were being pulled by dinosaurs that time. So in order to make these dictionaries available for the modern world, they had to be digitized, and they were in the Philippines. And then they were put into an application, and the application ran from a CD-ROM, which is something that some of you will remember. And nowadays, they made an internet application. Not nowadays, a few years ago. I'm going to show it, and it's good if you now, for the effect, imagine that you're watching a movie and the drums start rolling. It's slowly and softly, and it gets louder and faster. And then finally the camera turns, and you see the application. So sad. It was written in Flash, and we have a problem with that. So something had to be done. And they asked me, Pieter, can you create a new front end using HTML5 and JavaScript? And I said, well, I'm not really into JavaScript, but I can do it in XSLT. I can try to do it. So they said, oh, go ahead, you try it, and if it doesn't work, you will have to do it in JavaScript for the same price. So I said, agreed, but I thought, uh-oh. So, here it is. I'll show you some of the features of the new application. And the thing is not that it is a particularly nice application. My point is that it is a very normal application with many of the features that you would use in a normal internet application nowadays. But it has been done with Saxon.js in XSLT. And this is the nice part. And I wanted to see if it really works just by discovering it. So it has an interface with tabs. And if you click on the titles, and if you don't want to go back to the server, you have to deal with the clicks and show another tab, and you have to do that in JavaScript normally, and now you have to do that in XSLT. So that should be possible. Another thing of the application is that you have, like many applications nowadays, a type ahead facility. And normally you would go and you find something at Twitter or wherever, and you provide the callback function, and then you are ready for your callback. But I had to redo it in XSLT, and it proved surprisingly easy. It also takes into account the right column, the dictionaries that you have selected, the checkboxes. So the nice thing that we now already see is that the word computer does occur in the Frisian dictionary, the WFT, and the dictionary of the Dutch language, but not in the medieval dictionary and not in the Old Dutch dictionary. So that's something we should explain, but I don't know. Another thing that many applications have is a kind of keyboard. You press one of the funny characters over there. Even some characters come out of the private part of Unicode. And in order to do that, you need to find out which text area, which text box has focus. Normally you would do that in JavaScript, and I still do because XSLT has an extension to do so. And then you have to find the caret, and you have to modify it, and so on, but everything works. Of course, it's so obvious that I nearly forgot to tell, but you should be able to show the results of your query. And in fact, the server returns the queries in the results in XML. So here the program proved to be much easier than the original Flash application, which had to convert XML to HTML in Flash code instead of XSLT. So I was happy here. The final feature is that in XSLT we have to record earlier queries so that the user can recall them and use them again or modify them. So we need a memory, and you can do it. And by the way, you see that you can also do a pop-up in Saxon-JS, of course. So I'm going to spend a few minutes, and I don't want to be too long, in how it works. The first thing that you should know is that normally XSLT takes an input document or an input tree and then transforms it by producing an output tree or an output document. And Saxon.js is different because it takes the tree that is part of the browser, part of the window, and then it modifies it. So that's an entirely different model. So what you see here is that JavaScript events have been mapped to XSLT modes. So what happens here is that if you click on the button with the name search, this template is going to run and modify the document in the browser. This is not interesting, and here you see how it modifies it. It sets attributes by means of an extension instruction, IXSL, set attribute or remove attribute. And CSS does the rest of showing the tabs. 5 minutes, okay, I should hurry up. Another thing is that you want to put content into your document. You can do that with an extension of the result document function, providing some special filling of the parameters. If you don't want your application to freeze, if you load the document from the net, you have a schedule action operation that lets a template run only after the document has been loaded, so that you get asynchronous behavior. One of the things that I found, and I had to debug, was that XSLT now has side effects. And one of the things in the application is that a user makes a query, you have to display a wait effect, a returning icon or something like that. In the meantime, you calculate the results, you load them, you display them, and then you cancel the wait effect. But what happened was that Saxon.js didn't do these things in the order that I programmed them. So that was strange. It took me hours, and then I finally went to Saxonica, and they found out that there is a difference here between the normal Saxon and Saxon.js, because normally Saxon uses a technique which is called lazy evaluation. It evaluates only when the result is needed. And well, the order of evaluation was different than what I specified, so my entire application was spoiled, and this was the second time that I thought, uh-oh. But, well, I thought this is a big deal, but it turned out that in a few days they had repaired it, so I could carry on with my experiment. I was very happy. I already told you that in some circumstances we do still need JavaScript because Saxon-JS is about modifying the document, and if you do things that go beyond that, like I show here, you have to go to JavaScript, and my application does contain 15 or 20 lines of JavaScript. There are also things that are hard to do. I still one that is my customer is not satisfied with, and that is that if you schedule an action, you load a document from the network, it takes long, the user wants to cancel it, and there is no facility in the API to cancel your scheduled action. So that is a pity that I'm, well, still concerned with. Another thing is that, yeah, I think we should make it popular somehow, because I don't have a commercial interest, but as a user, I would like to have a user community around it. So I think we should make it more popular by providing a library with very common operations, and perhaps we should do something like in Bootstrap, that you make it users very easy to create an application. And in Bootstrap, perhaps you know Bootstrap, that is an internet framework for creating applications. It consists of CSS and JavaScript. We could leave out the JavaScript and maintain the CSS and replace the JavaScript with XSLT. Well, then you have not done nothing yet. But I think if we add XML to Bootstrap and provide XML structures that are even easier to work with than the Bootstrap identifiers, references, data attributes, and things like that, we can make it so easy that people will turn to this solution and perhaps turn to XSLT. So that would be nice. So my conclusion is obvious, so I skip it. I have another conclusion, and you already know it. I put it in classical Greek so that it stands out. It may look intimidating, but you know already a lot of the letters. You know the pi, the lambda, the alpha, the delta, and so on. And you know already some words. The first word is pola. It's the same word as poly that you know from polymorphic, polyclinic, polyphonic. It means many. The third word you also know, it's dyna, and you know that from dinosaur. It means awesome. And the last word of the first line is dinotron. It's the same word as dyna. It means more awesome. So now you can guess what it means. It means there is nothing more awesome than XSLT, as said by Sophocles. Thank you. Any questions?
I was afraid the conclusion was the same. We replace XSLT by JavaScript. So.
You're saying that as if you don't want me to ask something. No. I was wondering about the little part where you were talking about side effects. I mean, XSLT is a functional language. A functional language is supposedly not having side effects. You were going very fast through it. Maybe you can put up that slide again, because I was wondering what the input tree is and what's happening there. Maybe you can...
This one?
No, a little bit back, where you...
Yeah.
No, further back, with the one with the code. One back. I think this one, yeah. So you're saying side effect. What's really happening here? So you have a match on a button. I'm assuming there's an input tree.
Closer to the microphone.
Sorry, what?
Closer, yeah.
Closer, okay. So you have an input tree there, and you're modifying that input tree. How is that a side effect? I mean, you're essentially taking a little part of XML, and you're changing that, or what's happening there?
Yeah, I don't know if you should call it a side effect. I haven't given this much thought. But, well, in fact, yeah, that would be a good idea. Great. Thank you. To the rescue.
I think there are two kinds of side effects that we're trying to deal with. One is the fact that you are actually modifying the HTML page. And the model we try and have for that is a bit like XQuery update, that all the updates happen at the end. Now, we haven't actually quite implemented all of that currently. We did in Saxon-CE, the predecessor product, but some of that's not quite implemented in Saxon-JS yet. But the idea is that all the updates to the HTML page should happen at the end of a transformation phase. And a transformation, if you click a button, you start a new transformation. And that transformation, its only side effects are visible at the end of that transformation. And if it schedules an action, that starts a new transformation. And so it's reasonably clean in terms of a sequence of events, each of which has side effects that are only visible at the end of that transformation. The other area you get is that because you can call out to JavaScript, your JavaScript functions can have side effects. And that's exactly the same as you get when you call out to extension functions in Java on the server-side product. And it's basically something you just have to manage. You have to be aware of the fact that if you call a JavaScript function and you don't use the result, then the call might not happen. And we're trying to help with that. There's a new construct I'm experimenting with called Saxon-Do, which says do it now and do it regardless whether you use the result and things like that. So trying to make the effect of external function calls a bit cleaner in the language. But yes, you definitely have that issue of an interaction between a functional language and an environment that you can interact with that is stateful.
So if I understand that, Michael, then the side effect that he was explaining here is not really a side effect because it happens at the end of the transformation. Then I'm not really understanding the other point you were trying to explain, where you said it runs out of sync, and as an end result of that, you're having problems with displaying the page.
The particular issue was a mixture of very, very detailed things. The particular issue was a mixture of design things and implementation things, and it was probably best not to go into the detail because I don't recall the detail. But as so often, the specific problem had aspects that were very general and fundamental to the design, and aspects that were very particular to the particular code that the user had written and that Saxon had written.
Thank you.
I'm glad you were here.
Well, you could have done it on coffee break too. It's fun. So, any other question? No? Thank you again, Pieter.